Welcome to the Mearns History Group video channel. Now, just where is Mearns? Well, Newton Mearns, to give it its full name, is a suburban area 7 miles south of Glasgow. At one time, not all that long ago, it was just a quiet rural village. Housing development started in the 1950s and have continued to do so ever since, changing the face of the area forever. In our videos, we hope to show you something of what life used to be like in Newton Mearns.
Nearly every community has a graveyard in its midst. Sadly, many of these have become lonely, forgotten areas. Burials have declined greatly over recent years, and the number of relatives left to visit and tend graves has also declined. Many local authorities, left with the problem of maintaining these areas, face a continuous problem of dealing with ageing, unstable, heavy headstones, and have had to collapse some for safety reasons, or have been unable to repair those that have already collapsed through age or vandalism. All graveyards, however, are a remarkable record of those that have gone before us. The inscriptions can often hint at some fascinating story waiting to be unravelled by historians. This is Mearns Kirkyard on the outskirts of Newton Mearns. It's thought that a Celtic church had been established here around 800 AD. The earliest written evidence dates from 1190, when a priest, Helia de Perthic, gifted the newly founded Anglo-Norman church at Mearns to Paisley Abbey. Various churches have stood on this site, and the present building was erected in 1813. Many unknown burials have possibly taken place here over the past centuries, possibly thousands, but the earliest legible inscription which can be seen today is 1611. At the entrance to the kirkyard are these two sentry boxes, which were intended to discourage the 19th century grave robbers. There is at least one documented account of grave robbing from the kirkyard. It was this fascinating history that prompted some enthusiastic volunteers to do something that would ensure the graves here were properly documented.
We're always interested, myself and Jim are always interested in the local history of where we're living at that particular time, and where better to go than the graveyard.
We really didn't know what we were about, and it was a learning curve, I have to say. First of all, Andrew Wiper mapped the whole graveyard, measured out each stone and produced beautiful maps.
And from being hesitant about being involved in exercise, I found myself taking the lead insofar as I realised that we had to subdivide the graveyard into squares of 8 metres because I had an 8 metre rule. The subdivision of the squares proceeded and the group followed on behind.
We were, my husband and myself and Dan, we were all together as a group. And what we were involved in was merely cleaning the stones, recording what was on the stones, measuring the height of the stones, and we did some of the checking.
I had the remit to take all the information and put it onto a computer so it could be reproduced in book or CD or website format.
After a year, we were encouraged to apply for a grant. To our surprise, we got the full grant, and this changed the whole exercise insofar as it became a much more structured and professional survey. We applied for a grant of £9,800. We were able, because of this grant, to employ professional help in certain respects which we wouldn't have done otherwise. For example, the Eastwood Photographic Society were brought in, and they were absolutely splendid. In addition, we were able to think about a quality textbook and also a website.
We found as we were working there were people who came about the graveyard. It is still a living graveyard. People who came up maybe annually from the south of England to visit a stone, and they were able to help us too. But the majority of the research was done through online facilities. It's what everybody can do these days. It's just available online. Scotland's People, you get the censuses from 1841 to 1901, you get births, marriages and deaths from 1855, that's the part that particularly interested us, and of course you can get access to the old parish registers too.
Eventually, over 230 stones had been cleaned, logged and photographed.
I think what we discovered was that whilst the initial part of the exercise had been pretty formal in the sense of recording all the data that was available and visible to any person who visited the graveyard, what came to light in my estimation initially was curiosity. Curiosity, I think, is a big component of the human being, and it was one thing looking at a stone blank or with some very, very minimal information on it, and another understanding what this person stood for and what this person lived like and where his living was and all the various aspects that would normally be very attractive to learn. I think one of the aspects that tends to be a bit off-putting is the fear that it's going to be a very complex and difficult matter to look into history, when indeed it's amazing how quickly and how easily you can tap into the resources that are available.
And with these resources, a comprehensive book was prepared, giving a background history to each stone along with its inscription and a photograph.
The construction of the actual book pages was really down to common sense. We followed on the trail of what you describe as a sort of logical sequence. As the viewer, I always took the view, and the committee did as a whole, that this had to be something that didn't entail the reader or the viewer of the site any difficulty in absorbing this material, and indeed make it as simple as possible but keep to the main subject. We restricted ourselves, for instance, with each account being contained on one page. So when you start looking into the combination of the local history, the public records, and in addition to that, taking aboard any other material that you're able to glean from various sources, it's amazing just how much you can eventually produce. And this is what we aim to do, and we hope that by doing so that we've probably given, shall we say, to use a peculiar term perhaps for a graveyard, we put some flesh in the bones of the individuals in the Mearns Kirkyard.
This information was also put on CD form, and a website was created allowing the widest possible audience access to the graveyard. At the front of the church, a new notice board has been erected by the project detailing the location of all the stones and the names of those interred. This project has achieved much more than just cleaning and recording inscriptions. The information now available makes tracing family history much easier. Also waiting to be discovered is much of the history of the parish, as can be seen from looking at just a few of the gravestones. Near the entrance to the kirkyard is this memorial to the Hamilton family of Greenbank House. The house was in the hands of the Hamilton family from 1797 until 1961, when it was purchased by Mr. William Blythe, who donated it to the National Trust for Scotland in 1976. James Dunlop Hamilton, buried here, purchased the ground and financed the building of Mearns Public School and the Teacher's House in Ayr Road. The school opened in 1876 and eventually became Mearns Junior Secondary School, taking pupils up to third year secondary education. In 2001, a new Mearns Primary School was opened in Hunter Drive, about half a mile further south, and the old school was closed. The plaque commemorating James Dunlop Hamilton's benevolence, which used to be located in the old school, has now been relocated in the new Mearns Primary. Huge local anger broke out when it became known the old school was to be demolished. Despite the protests, the school was pulled down in 2005 for a proposed extension to the adjacent shopping centre. James Hunter, schoolmaster of Mearns, taught in the old parish school at Mearns Kirk next to the church. When the new Mearns Public School opened in 1876, he became its first headmaster. The approach road to the new Mearns Primary School was named Hunter Drive in his honour. These stones with a simple inscription are a reminder that part of Busby was once in Mearns parish. Thomas Porter was a proprietor of the Newton Inn, or Porter's Inn as it was better known. This was situated at Mearns Cross and is thought to have opened around 1860. A horse bus service was operated by Thomas Porter from the inn to the railway station at Giffnock. Today, this filling station stands on the site of the inn, which was demolished around 1930. This stone marks the grave of James Ritchie, the blacksmith. His smithy is located not far from the Kirkyard, where it now forms part of a local restaurant. Catherine Ritchie, his daughter, was a much respected teacher at Mearns School and a prominent member of the community. She was given the honour of officially opening the new Mearns Parish Church Halls in 1970. This stone marks the resting place of William Kennedy, a traveller or gypsy, described as a horse dealer and hawker. His grave stands isolated in a pleasant corner of the kirkyard, as befits a man used to the quiet seclusion of the countryside. Close to William Kennedy are the graves of those from a very different social standing, the Pollock family. John and Arthur Pollock, in partnership with one Arthur Gilmer, founded the firm of Pollock, Gilmer and Company in 1804. This became the leading British firm in the North Atlantic timber trade. The company's office was in Stockwell Street and later at 19 Union Street in Glasgow. Through this business, the partners became extremely wealthy men, who then went on to invest heavily in property. The brothers purchased the estate of Broome in 1837, and there they built Broome House, now Belmont School. Alan Gilmer acquired the vast estate of Eaglesome from the Earl of Eglinton around the same time. John and Arthur had an older brother, Alan. His son married Arthur's daughter Margaret and lived in Broome House in a grand style with 6 servants and a butler. However, Alan's property interests in Ireland failed, leading to severe financial losses. Standing within sight of the Pollock stones on the opposite side of the kirkyard are these interesting stones which bear no inscription. Research has revealed they were chosen by Alan Gilmore as his memorial, but seemingly his heirs forgot to make any records of his birth, death or virtues. Arnold James Henderson was a well-known shipbuilder whose grandfather David Henderson founded the Clydeside shipbuilding firm of D&W Henderson in 1872. Here, a variety of ships were built. The yard was acquired by Harland and Wolff after World War I and closed in 1935. The area where the shipyard was located is now being redeveloped. All that remains of Henderson's today is this building, which was once their drawing office. Henderson's home was Southfield House, which was demolished for the building of Mearns Kirk Hospital. William Maver was the founder of the local building firm William Maver and Son, one of the earliest housing developers in Mearns. In the 1930s, they built houses in the Arthur Lee Drive and Gilmerton Crescent area. Elizabeth Maver, his daughter, also buried here, taught at the little school at Logan's Well on the Ayr Road until it closed in 1928. She then moved with her 5 pupils to Mearns School, where she taught until she retired in 1948. The restoration team, through their work, have shown how all the people buried here, whether from a high or humble background, contributed in their own way to the local community. Today, burials and headstones are no longer so common, and yet throughout the country they form a unique record of our past.
Any group of people could do this. It's just a matter of wanting to do it, seeing it needs done, and just sticking with it until it's done.
Can see no reason why a person working with simply a notepad and a pencil shouldn't set about recording graves.
You don't need to have any previous experience to go in and do it, just an interest.
If these people working alone do not undertake this, so many of the inscriptions are going to be lost to erosion.
This project wasn't just about taking down the inscriptions, it was finding out about the people who lived in former years.
It grew and grew and grew into the wonderful project that it has become.